Alright, so I was recording some things, but I think I missed a few things. So this right here, as you can see it right here, is the meat that I washed earlier. I added a little bit of basil on it, some red pepper, and I also added a little bit of the seasoning that I prepared earlier, which this is the one that I'm using today is Knorr cubes. I normally get these out, put it in a bowl, and add a little water, microwave it, then blend it together and mix it into the add it to the meat. The reason why I do that is so that it can season and marinate and get that flavor locked into the beef. It's very important because when you take a bite of meat, oftentimes you could make a soup. If you don't season the meat properly, the meat tastes different than the actual soup. So right now, you notice I didn't add any water. A lot of the water comes from the sauce that I put in, and also the some that are coming out of the meat. Now the next thing here is add the onions. There are two different texture that I put in here. It is red onions. I diced some, which is this one, as you can tell. I put a lot of onions because I love that onion flavor on meat. And on my Egusi soup, which is what I'm making today. And you add a little bit more. If you notice, these kinds are more sliced versus diced. So that gives it extra texture on the soup. Still, I'm not adding any water yet until I get it just right. Everyone make theirs differently. Me, I make mine this way. And this is pretty much how I learned. So that's what I'm doing. One other thing is, I usually add like crawfish and some different seasoning to it. However, my wife is allergic to seafood and she loves egusi soup. So I try to make it without the crawfish. And that's why I add some of these cubes to it to give it that tasty feeling. I think she's gonna like it. Alright, so let's let it simmer for a little bit. So we're back on this. I'll let it simmer a little bit. Now I get to add all my extra things like paprika. When you're opening these right here, make sure you open it in the right way. If you want to use this side, use this side. I've made a mistake one time. I opened this side and poured everything in, and you don't want to do that. So take your time and open it up the right way. What you would notice is the aroma that comes out that start floating around your house is going to make all your kids hungry. But the key to making this is patience. It takes time, trust me. It takes a lot of time. Don't cook this when you're hungry. Cook it when you're not starving. Alright. Alright. So this is the pepper that I've been using for a while. It's called African Cameroon pepper. I really like this because not only is it spicy, but it is has a lot of flavor to it. So don't put too much because you might end up burning your lips. I know Nigerians, we have a different taste buds when it comes to spicy food than everybody else, or especially Africans do, to be in general. But one thing I always like to make sure is when you put in any ingredients into your food, check to make sure it doesn't have salt. That's why I don't usually add too much salt on my food until it is done. And if it is done and it needs some salt, I may add some, but I literally don't like too much salt. I think you can cook the food and put very little salt so long as it's flavorful. That flavor will overshadow everything else. So this is being seasoned, and I still have a few more things to add. Okay, so this right here. Some people ask me, why do I add ground cinnamon? I add ground cinnamon to my food for one particular reason. It does have a little bit of kind of a kick that help trigger all the other ingredients you have in the system, in the soup, to be able to bring out the taste. So that's why I add ground cinnamon. I add it to my meat sauce that I make. I use it for pretty much almost everything, I would say. But don't add too much because you don't want your food tasting like cinnamon. So here it is. I love this. Trader Joe's. Next thing is garlic. I have two different kind of garlic. I have one that I can slice myself. I also have this one that's pre-sliced and pre-chopped, which works a little better than this one. And my wife just got home and she is talking, so I'm going to use this one. I like it, squeeze a little bit and make sure you mix it. Don't put too much. It works. Make sure you mix it because you don't want too much of that garlic taste. But this is going to work. This is actually going to work pretty well once you look at it. But if you could smell it, it's amazing. So the next thing I'm going to add is tomato sauce. Done. One thing you realize is I have not added any water to this yet. So with this, having this, what I generally do is add a little water, swish it together. And my motto in life is I never like to waste anything. So a little bit of this, rub it together, voila. Now I got all of it out, trash. Alright, so this is the second one. This is what I'm adding to because I'm trying to make a big pot so I can freeze some for later. You know, my wife usually hits it and I never get any left, so I'm just gonna make as big as possible so I can have enough to eat myself. I'll save it for work. Okay. One thing I was gonna mention is there are sometimes some people don't have meat to put in the food. The other substitute for meat is mushrooms. And that's why I had this mushroom. I was gonna put it in there, but I'm not gonna put it in here because I have meat already in my soup. But if you don't care for meat, or you want to make something a little more vegetarian-like, add mushrooms to it. You can get a thicker mushroom so you can cut it in chunks. And just taking that bite, it does feel like you're eating meat, to be honest with you. But that's another alternative to add to replace meat. So now that this is, I'm going to let this simmer and cook in, then I will slowly start adding the rest of the ingredients. Alright, so I was going to bring this up. Most of the time when I cook certain things, I will use palm oil. The reason why I didn't use it right now is because palm oil leaves a little aftertaste. And if you mix it with regular oil, which is right here, and add some of the palm oil in it, it does diffuse that aftertaste. So you have to cook it for a while. But I left it out of this because sometimes some people that'll eat it don't like that aftertaste, but for me I enjoy it, so I'm not gonna use this palm oil. Alright, so before I add water to it, before you add water or anything, think about it before you do that. I use broth, to add to it because it gives it that extra flavor, so it's not messing up or it's not changing the texture. But always use unsalted broth. This one is chicken broth, even though I have beef here, but I had extra left, so I didn't want to just let it go to waste. And of course, no food is done until you add the Maggi cube. In this case, it's not a cube. We used to call it Maggi cube. Crush it, just sprinkle it. Or some people call it bouillon cube, right? That's what everyone usually calls it. It always adds extra flavor. So this is just the beginning of the meal, of the soup. There's still a few more things that I need to add to it. This is where it gets complicated, where you literally have to smell it and get that flavor. I know it's missing something, but I figured out once I add the egusi seed, add the kale. I use kale. Some people use spinach, but I like to have the extra texture with kale. So when I take a bite, I know that I'm getting a bite of some vegetable. All right, let's see what else we can add next. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna add is egusi seed. It's melon seed, as you can tell. This is one of the best soup that I like. I like egusi soup, and also there's ogbono soup, okra soup. My wife loves the okra soup that I've made before, but for the most part, I make egusi soup. This is this melon seed that's grounded into fine powder like this. So let's go ahead and open it up. One thing about cooking this is as soon as you add this to the soup, if you do not turn the heat down, it will burn. You'll get a crust on the bottom. So the first thing I gotta do is turn this heat down a little, and then let's rip it. Slowly put it in like this, just gently, and stir it while you do it if you can. Like this. Slowly stir it. It will get thicker, and this is where you're gonna need to add a little more chicken broth, because depending on how you like it, some people like it really thick. Particularly, I'm gonna add kale to it, so I want it a little looser. I don't want the soup to be too thick, because what will happen is it will burn. There we go, add the rest. I'm done with that. Now I can add a little more chicken broth. Beef broth, whatever you got, it works. I'm using chicken right now because I have used it before. So let's stir this out. It's good. It smells good. Alright, so this is going to pop a lot. I'm going to cover it, whatever, and turn this way down. Just let it simmer. Alright. Let's add a little more chicken broth. Mix it. Yeah. There we go. I always like to add my kale last, because I always have this feeling if you overcook your greens, the nutrition goes out of it. So you want to keep the green nice and somewhat fresh when you put it in, and don't overcook it, so you can still get some of that nutrient. Okay, this is the most exciting part. Adding the kale. When you add the kale, keep in mind it's going to fill up the pot depending on how big your pot is. Just so add a little and stir it, and let it go down a little, and then add more. Mix it. I like getting these kales in a bag because it's already pre-washed and cleaned, and all you gotta do is just add it. A little more. And the truth is, you don't have to use all of it, but I do, because I know that once I put it in, it will cook down. But mix it. Do your best to try to mix it. And I use the spatula like this because I don't mixer like this, because I have issues with using a regular cooking spoon. Sometimes I'll use wooden spoon. It gives me a little extra handle, something to grip it. The other ones are too thin. So you will mix it up. Trust me, once I'm done, it will not look nothing like this. It just blends all in. Use that little extra muscle. There you go. There it is. See how far it went down? Oh. There we go. Now, once we're finished with this, this is where you decide whether you want to add salt or not. Let it cook a little bit before you do that, because there's some moisture in the kale that's going to actually dilute some of the seasoning you've already put in. So you can also add a little more salt at this point. But I'm going to let mine simmer a little, and I have it on low heat, and come back and check on it. Alright, so this is what it looks like. It's pretty much finished. Now I can do a little taste test, which I usually don't taste my food until afterward. My goodness, this is good. This part of the soup is done. I give myself a little taste of it. And one meat. Bon appetit. The next thing I gotta make is the fufu. Eba. Pounded yam. That's what it is.